Good afternoon, this is Miss Young again with another question on how to correct errors in pseudocode. And this happens to be paper 21 from June 2024 and it's question 4 on that paper. So again, if you've watched my other videos, the first thing we're going to look for is what we call matching pairs. Then, and you can look at the other videos to do, but that's end while, while, repeat until, for, next, if, end if. We then have what I call pattern, looking for specific repeating patterns. Then we have what I call variable mismatch. Then if we have a declare, then we should look for data type issues. We should look for variable initialization issues. Then we have the logic errors. Now this particular question relies a little bit on knowing the type of algorithm. This is clearly, if we look at the question, is intended to allow at random between 1 and 20 values, and it's going to give us the total and the average. So we can have between 1 and 20, and we want to do so. It's a totaling and averaging algorithm. So you really ought to know how those work, because that will give you the easiest way to the full 4 marks in this question. So let's start, as I do, with matching pairs. We have an if, so we would expect an end if, and we have a next loop. So we have to decide which one is wrong, and hopefully you can see that we have a loop 1 to limit, which is essentially a for loop, for next. So it seems to me straight away that line 7 is the issue, and that we should change if to for. Do we have any other? No. So we've dealt with matching pairs. We got any patterns? The only really thing that's repeating here, and that comes to what I would call variable mismatch if there is any. So we've dealt with patterns. So now let's deal with variable mismatch. So we have loop, limit, value, total, and we want to loop 1 to limit time. So that seems to be acceptable. We're going to output a number. So we're looking for the number, which presumably is going to be stored in value, but it says input loop. Well, loop is the loop variable, so we couldn't possibly input the loop. So it's not loop, it's not limit, it's not total. So the only option that can be is that should be value. So we have an issue on line 9 where we want to change loop to value. That's our, do we have any other matches of total and value? They go together. We're outputting the total, and it's the total. We're outputting the average, and the average is the total divided by how many items we've got. So there doesn't seem to be any variable mismatch left. So then we come to data types. So we know that the loop is an integer because we're going around a number of times, and we can see here that loop is declared as a string. So clearly that needs to be an integer. So we have an issue on line 1 where we want to change string to integer. So we have a data type mismatch error here. Limit is an integer because we want to do it a specific whole number of times. The value, well, somebody could enter 3.14 or 3, so that seems to be okay. Total, well, if we're going to enter real values, then the total is going to be a floating point number as well, so that seems to be okay. And so we've looked at data type. So variable initialization, well, we know if this is a totaling algorithm, that total should be set to true, sorry, not to true, to 0. So our variable initialization. So are there any logic errors? Well, there are no logic. This is an odd one because there is no logic per se. What we could do, of course, is we check what is the average. Well, average is total divided by limit. So, well, that would be a operator error, but that's the closest we could possibly come. So, what is the other logic error, or what is the other error? Well, we know that every time we enter a value, we need to add that to the total, because the total is like a tally, and every time through the loop we need to update the tally by the value. And what's happening here, you can see, is that instead of adding, and we should know that from our totaling algorithm, is that the total should be, or the new total should be whatever the current total is, plus the value. So the issue finally is on line 10, and we need to change the asterisk to a plus. That one doesn't really follow these patterns as straightforward as some of the others, but hopefully if you know your algorithm, then you should be able to get that. But again, with this methodic way of doing it, it was a relatively straightforward 3 out of 4, or 75%, which is going to get you an A on the IGCSE for Cambridge. And so hopefully that has helped you to help with that type of question. I'm Miss Young, and hopefully I'll see you later.